Of course, thank you, and welcome everyone from wherever you're currently residing and joining us today for an exciting session. So, I'm sure you're just excited to kick off this awesome presentation from Laura Costa dos Santos, and she's going to talk you through her golden insights in using positive pedagogy in youth sport. So I've had the real pleasure and privilege in knowing Laura on both a professional and a personal level. I don't mind saying this, she really is one of my most inspirational people that I've met since being here in the United States and Athens, Ohio. And here's just a brief overview as to why I hold her in such high regard. So Laura, go ahead and keep blushing at this point. So Laura is a truly fully encompassing Bobcat alumni. So while earning her master's degree in coaching education here at Ohio University, she also served as the assistant volleyball coach for the Bobcat. So she really is a walking Bobcat. Prior to Bleeding Green, as we would say here at Ohio University, Laura also served as an assistant volleyball coach at Oregon University, Bowling Green State University, and Western Illinois University. Prior to coaching, Laura also played volleyball at the University of Illinois and was a first and second All-American outside hitter. So you're starting to see now why I hold her in such high regard. And if that wasn't enough, Laura also worked with youth athletes and coaching at 3 different clubs. So she really is a hero. So today, Laura's professional success has really led her to become a facilitator here at Ohio University within our Patton College, and also holding a full-time role as an academic advisor at Shawnee University and providing her golden wisdom to future generations of young professionals. So with that, without further ado, I hope you all give Laura a warm virtual welcome to Laura Costa dos Santos.
Thanks, Letitia. That was really nice of you. So again, if you can move to the next slide. Sorry about that. We're working on it real quick. Again, so like Letitia just said, I am a volleyball player first. I played a lot of sports when I was younger, but I had the opportunity to play at the University of Illinois, where I was an outside hitter, and I had a wonderful experience while I was at Illinois. I was a first and second team All-American. I had a great experience. My coaches, he currently coaches Kevin Hambley. He coaches at Stanford, and he really wanted us to be able to have a big part of us as athletes having that experience and learning from making sure that we were helping with scouting. We had voices, in the locker room, and so that really, I think, kind of started off my path into why I wanted to get into coaching. So as Letitia mentioned, I coached at Western Illinois University. I've been at Bowling Green State University, Oregon State, and then Ohio. And my husband, actually, he currently is the assistant coach with the volleyball team. They actually have a game today. And so when we moved to Ohio, it was an opportunity for me to go back and get my master's in the coaching education department. And I think the biggest thing for me is, I had all this experience going in. I was like, all right, what other things do I want to learn and do I need to learn that I haven't gotten through just having that experience actually coaching at the collegiate level? So during that time, I was a director of operations. I also, coach volleyball, a youth volleyball team. And in the summer or in the spring, I started coaching through games class with Dr. Harvey. And so during that time, I would go to class and we would, with my classmates, practice some of these TGFU, teaching games for understanding, and learning about positive pedagogy. And then I ended up going over to my youth, sport team. And I was like, this is the perfect chance for me to try some of these things that as a coach, I hadn't previously, done. So because my experience was so great, I thought this was just a great combination of, hey, let's try it with this youth team and see if this is something, that can really work. And this is just a perfect opportunity to try. Next slide, please. Okay, so I started with Alita. We were a 13s team. And something that was really interesting is I had 2 out of the 10 players that had played club volleyball before. So I'm going from coaching at a collegiate level for many years to coaching a regional team where I knew I'd have to focus on foundations, I'd have to focus on skills. I had to really just go back, and the things that I took for granted with my college players, I had to relearn and kind of reteach from really at a basic level. So when I came into this season, I really wanted to try and use that games-based approach and that positive pedagogy, because I thought this would be the perfect opportunity for athletes who are starting kind of their volleyball career to have this experience right from the beginning. So I wanted to make sure that it was about all of us together. It wasn't about individual players. We were going to learn and grow as we go, and that my players really had a voice on the team. Next slide. So it looks like we might have maybe lost Dr. Harvey in this. I'm not totally sure. I can continue kind of talking about my experience, and hopefully this pops back up here really fast. But so I ended up, we kind of started out the team, and I ended up making sure that I talked to my parents and saying, okay, this is what I want to do. This is, it might look different than kind of what you're used to, because, a lot of people focus on skills, where I really wanted to focus on learning kind of a game-based approach. And so we are going to have this is what it's going to look like. I also wanted to have my players not just know about skills, but really learn about volleyball in general. So if there's any volleyball coaches out here, for me, I wanted to make sure they knew about the game in total. So it's about making sure they create swings, making sure they know how to score points, making sure how they have, certain defensive goals. And so with that, I created this kind of sheet that I handed to the players. I handed to the coaches, and then we just, we kind of went from there. So in the beginning, I had my game skill game, and it was interesting because at first I wasn't used to really starting off practices with a game. I would start with skill. At the end of the game, then you're, we're able to really see what we did from practice. But starting with the game was interesting. So I'd have kind of a 2v2, I'd have a 3v3, we would do half court, short court, and then we would make sure that we had certain attacks. I'm going to try to see if I can share my screen potentially with the slideshow. So maybe I'm able to do that. So I have my slideshow up here. Let's see. Sorry about this, everyone. Hopefully we can, get this back up and running. I always say technology is great, but then if it doesn't work, it's pretty bad. So let's see if I can share my screen. Maybe if anyone has any questions, we could also ask, some questions if there's anyone's here right now.
So I'm just seeing if there's any questions coming in just yet. None as of yet, Laura, but you're doing a great job in getting us back onto a visual presentation for this.
Perfect. I can keep talking about my presentation. I don't think I can share my screen, it looks like, unfortunately. But I can keep going. So anywho, so I started with, kind of the game approach. And one of the things that I also realized is we would play 6-on-6, but I had a lot of players who really didn't have a lot of experience. And those players, they would get less touches. So you get 3 touches in a row, and then you have to send the ball over. But unfortunately, the players that were really good seemed to always get the touches in the 6-on-6 matches. So I realized with the 2v2 and the 3v3, they would definitely at least have you know, 1 or 2 touches each rally, which was really, really, really helpful. We're back on, I think. Here we go. Perfect. Awesome. Wonderful work. So anywho, so this is, again, this is my team. We're at a game here. So at first when I did this, and I think I kind of talked about it, I was a little hesitant. You know, it felt like we were playing games. It felt like I wasn't coaching, but I realized that it was very much, I was trying to control the situation versus letting them figure it out as I went. Can I have the next slide, please, Tristan? Awesome. Okay, so then after that, I started, you know, implementing these short-sighted games, and then I decided to use the think, pair, share model, and this is also with the grow model as well. So with think, pair, share, it's exactly how it sounds. You think about a concept for a second. So I would pose a question about maybe a drill, a skill that we were doing. I would pair them up together, and then we would all come together and share. And one of the things that was really, really important is that I felt like, again, you have those athletes who are always touching the ball, who, you know, are kind of your rock stars, but then you have some who are doing the right thing, but especially when it comes to the group setting, they wouldn't be sharing, you know, what they thought about different drills. It was always kind of the ones who were really extroverted, love to talk, you know, the ones probably that you can't shut up sometimes. And so once I started using think, pair, share, I would make sure that I went around the group and at least asked one person from each group. And what was really interesting is that a lot of the players who I didn't think, you know, wanted to share first off, once they got in that position where they had to talk with their friends and then they actually had to share it with me, they really started to understand about the game of volleyball that I was teaching, you know, not just but this is what you need to do on like the whole, just with the game. And so I thought that that was really, really interesting, you know, that after a while they really kind of got out of their shells with the think, pair, share. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So one of the things, so now I decided, okay, these short-sighted games were really helpful in terms of getting a lot of touches, but then it was also, I wanted to use this think, pair, share, and this is probably one of my favorite experiences that I had using this. So I had them strategize for 30 seconds about how they could win before, as a pair, playing a full court 2-on-2, and this is with 13-year-olds, and like, we'll see what happens, but we're just gonna try it. So I had Kate and Bailey, if you look at the bottom, I have Kate and Bailey at the bottom, and then I have Greta and Ashlyn at the top. And when they decided to go out and do this, as a volleyball coach, as a collegiate coach, I was shocked. I never thought that a player would decide to be, and if you've ever watched beach, it's just really, really difficult to start front and back in a game of volleyball. And so I did, you know, I just did my best to not make any faces, to let them try it. And then obviously they played the game, they lost, which I knew could have, you know, was gonna happen. And I asked Greta and Ashlyn, I'm like, what did you guys, you know, why did you try that? And they're like, well, you know, we thought because they had played before, some of the balls that were dropping short, if you had a person there, then that person would be able to get the, you know, that ball easier. But what they didn't realize was, how do you get the ball that's in between the two of them, front and back? And then in terms of creating swings, which is one of the things that I really wanted to make sure that we were working on, if a person passed in the front, how would they be able to get back to get that full swing? And so this was one of the instances where, again, like Dr. Harvey said, they got to really try, they got to, you know, just kind of go through it. And so it's never something I would have done, but they learned from this lesson. Next slide. So kind of the last thing, so again, I really feel like for me, the positive pedagogy really helped them be empowered. So this is kind of an example. I had in practice, we were working on a serving drill, and I had each player need to get 3 serves over in a row. And as a total, as a group, we needed to have 6 out of the 10 have some success before we could move on. And so at first, you know, I have them all starting at one side, they're serving, you know, we were going through it. The player Bailey actually came up to me and she said, do you think we could do this drill if we had only 3 people serving? Because there's a lot of distractions. You know, there's just not enough space. And I said, yeah, that is a great idea. That makes this drill even better. And I don't think she would have been able to tell me that if there wasn't kind of that safe environment where her voice was heard and basically established through positive pedagogy. So I love that they wanted to correct and make things better, which is ultimately what you want. And I felt, especially from a 13-year-old, like that's, you know, having the confidence and being able to say that to a coach is awesome. Next slide, please. So if I look back on my season, I think at first the players were really hesitant. It was something they've never done. They've never really, you know, had some of the games that we'd start off with practice. They've never had all these think, pair, share. And I would even try to incorporate in games where on timeouts, it was just me. So I needed to collect my thoughts first and I'd have them pair up per position. But after the season, I asked, okay, what did you like? They loved starting the practice with the competition. It also reinforced for me, hey, we could do stuff in a game-like situation and we could work as we went through learning the game by playing the game. And they also really liked when I asked their opinions, what I thought, hey, how can we beat this team? So many of them had, you know, different ideas in different ways. And I just felt as a group, because we incorporated this think, pair, share, and we used short-sighted games, that they just communicated. We were able to communicate. I can definitely say, you know, our team, we were a regional team. We came across some teams that probably were better than us, but because, you know, we were positive, we had fun, you know, we would beat some of those teams where if a student, you know, if an athlete made a mistake, their coach would get on them. You know, we just kind of rolled it off back and we moved. I actually worked with this team after we had another season, and I continue to use this and they loved it. So that is kind of the end of my presentation.
Laura, thank you so much. You live up to my high regard that I hold you in, given all of the technical issues as well. This is why you're one of my favorite professional folks out there. So we do have plenty of questions coming in and some juicy ones for you to really kind of get to the meat to. So the first one is from Chris Nelson. Great question from Chris. Hey, Laura, was wondering what materials were on the sheet you have to your players and coaches at the beginning.
Yeah, we missed that slide actually. So I actually had two, I had like a coaching philosophy slide that talked specifically about positive pedagogy. And it talked about how I wanted to, you know, really make sure that my athletes were empowered. And then the other thing, and here's kind of the guidelines, I wanted to talk about what I wanted to do volleyball wise. So it's not just, oh, we need to, you know, get the volleyball over the net. We need to make sure we have different offense and defensive goals. So for offense, I had created swings, you know, look to score points. A lot of times I feel like students and athletes get so stuck on, oh, I just need to go up there and do my steps, but they forget about what they're doing in general. And then for defensive goals, it's about making sure that we are always going after the ball. We're creating swings. I really emphasized, you know, we're not the team that's just going to send the ball over on 2 or on 1. We want to send it over by getting a swing every single time. And in order to do that, you have to dig the ball high. So those would be kind of the two things. I didn't share my kind of the other guidelines of the positive pedagogy, but I just outlined this is what practice is going to look like. And this is why this is important to me, because I've learned this from my coaching education masters. Great question.
Great question to get us started. We have another juicy one, and I thought it was originally Aaron Connell posted this question, and originally it was a general question about coaching education, but I said let's just pose it to Laura and just see how she gets on a Saturday afternoon with this question. So Aaron asks, how prevalent is positive pedagogy in coach education? And I said you would weigh in on this, and then perhaps if Dr. Harvey is still around, maybe he could also weigh in on this. But I thought you could be the perfect person to get us started on this conversation.
I feel like I was pretty fortunate, you know, for being at Ohio. Dr. Harvey has, published many papers about positive pedagogy, about games-based learning. And so that, I think, through just being the masters here, that was an important part of what we were learning. And so that was one of the things that, as a collegiate coach, I knew the X's and O's. I played at a high level. I had a coach that, really taught us some great things. But on the other side, I got to see this whole other, I would say, world of learning about how we can best have our coaches or have our athletes be empowered, and then different tools of how to implement it. And so I realized, looking back, that my college coach, he was doing some of the things that we were learning. I just didn't realize that there was theories and bases behind what he was actually doing at that point. And so it was cool to kind of connect the two. So for me and for my education here, that's was one of the big parts that we got out of it. So hopefully that answered your question.
I think you've answered it excellently. I don't think there's anyone else that needs to weigh in on that. Good job. We have another amazing question. I love this question. These participants are asking some juicy questions. So this is a question from Kyle. Kyle asked, what would you say is the hardest thing about transitioning to a positive pedagogy approach? Conversely, what was the biggest win? I love this question.
That is a great question. I think at first, I had to get used to just doing it, making sure that I made space and time in the practices, because if you don't, it's very easy to just fall into what you've always done, which is going through practice, not asking for questions, not asking for that feedback. So I, had to make sure I put it in my practice plan. It was something I was going to do no matter what happened with the drill, however I felt that went, like we needed this to happen. And I think some of the biggest wins, honestly, I loved how my kids were, how much they knew that I was hoping that they would learn, but then because they would be telling it back to me, they would have really good insight, or at least we could have really good conversations about why they thought that certain way. And so I feel like overall they felt like, okay, they're learning and they're a part of this as much as I am. Like, it's not me telling it from down. It's like we are here equal. We're both learning through this whole process. So I guess for me, it just, we learned together. It was a really cool environment. I know my players loved it, and yeah, it was really great.
Thank you for that one. We have another question from Lee. Honestly, these participants are flooding us with questions. So this will probably have to be our last question, folks. And Laura, hopefully you can get around to answering some of the other amazing questions that are flooding in. You really have inspired everyone. So let me just find that question again. It was a really good question. Just bear with me 2 seconds. So this question is from Richard. I'm interested in hearing how parents responded when you explained your new approach.
I would say for the most part, because I started from the beginning and I said, this is how it's going to be, I do think I had some credibility. People knew me at the university, we're a small town, but people knew me that I coached with the Ohio University team. They saw my background as a player. They saw my background, as a coach at other universities. So once I had that meeting, I honestly didn't really have any issues in terms of parents, and I think they embraced it. I think at first they probably thought it was a little different, but over time, after our first tournament, and we did well, and our girls loved it. They really enjoyed playing, and we just would have a lot of fun while we were playing. I think at that point, they just were kind of sold, okay, this is a great environment for my daughter, and we're getting some wins and we're having a good time. So after that, it kind of solidified that this was what it was going to be. So I think for me, it just helped making sure that I put everything out there. I think if I didn't have that conversation, that would have made it more difficult when they came to practice or if they watched us at matches.
Perfect, thank you. Laura, you will have a bunch of fans after who have a ton of questions for you, so hopefully you get around to answering them when you jump off and have a little breather. Thank you to everyone for your amazing questions. We will be now transitioning over to the next presentation, and I'll be handing over, I believe, to Dr. Ashley Allenson, who will be your new moderator for Dr. Clayton Kuchik's presentation. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your amazing involvement and immersion in this session, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, everyone.